Congressman Byron Donald. He joins us now live from Capitol Hill. Byron, good to see you.
Good to be back with you guys. How you doing?
We're doing well. Listen, I got to tell you what is happening here. You see these kids on the streets, beating people up, jumping on cars and buses, looting. What is going on in America here?
Well, two things I think is what just alluded in some of the intro sound. Where are the parents? I mean, parents have to have a semblance of responsibility for where their children are, what their children are doing, and hold them accountable. I got 3 sons. They're not perfect, but it's my responsibility as a father to hold them accountable for their actions and try to lead them and explain to them what is acceptable behavior in our country, in our society, in our cities. The second piece is this. You have DAs and you have judges who are not enforcing the law. And when you allow little petty crimes to go unanswered in communities, all it does is ratchet up the temperature, ratchet up the mayhem, and people are going to suffer as a result.
Congressman, I just want to mention the young woman who was attacked. Her boyfriend, his name DJ, Ashley was the young woman. They were also robbed. And a police car drove around them and just drove by. They ended up getting a ride home from a woman named Lenora. She gave them shoes and actually took them to the hospital because the young man, you could see that his face was beaten up. And I'm not faulting the police because when faced with a mob, violent, what are they supposed to do if it's 2 officers in 1 cruiser? This is where we are, where it's literally teenage criminals in control.
Well, what we have and what you're seeing is that this is the result of the Democrats' reckless defund the police strategy. Now, I know Joe Biden and the Democrats are trying to reverse course and say how they support the police today in 2023, but it was literally a year ago when they were leading strong efforts to defund a lot of police departments. In many cities, they actually did defund police departments. They decreased the morale amongst police officers. And this is the result in so many cities. Now we have to rebuild all of that trust, frankly, between the community and with law enforcement and show the support for our law enforcement agencies. But you got to have more cops on the streets. You have to have a justice system that takes wrongdoing seriously and prosecutes that. When you have an effective order like that, where you have in a lot of cities in America, but unfortunately not all cities of America, you have a much more cohesive environment where everybody respects one another.
I agree with Dagen. It's not the cops' fault, but you do have a situation where you probably don't have parents at home who have control of their kids. But if that happens, then you need prosecutors to put these kids in jail, lock them up, and you don't need elected leaders like mayors who are going to downplay the role that these kids have mobbing the streets of Chicago and L.A.
Well, look, let me add one piece to this. You want to talk about Chicago, L.A., and many others. Let's talk about this piece. If you're enforcing the law as it exists, then it tells everybody else, it puts them all on notice, hey, man, you can't mess around. Because if you mess around, they're going to come and get you. And you have to do that. Look, I grew up in New York City when Rudy Giuliani was mayor. I was growing up. We knew NYPD was not playing around. And so you understood that as you were going about your business on a daily basis. You have a situation where you have government officials on the local level, DAs, judges, and depending on what's going on in some of these cities, even maybe some officers within the force who were not taking basic crime seriously. And that's actually demonstrating and showing young people that, hey, there are no standards. There is no accountability. You can just basically do what you want and get away with it. And until we start holding people accountable, you're going to get more of this stuff.
That's right. A judge, Congressman, moving on to this, a judge ordering the FBI to release records on the 2021 National School Board Association letter, that letter asking the Biden administration to investigate protests at school board meetings, referring to parents as essentially domestic terrorists. And this was a really circular effort to target parents, where the National School Board Association worked with the White House to write this letter, sent the letter in, and then the Justice Department sicked the FBI on these parents, and the FBI has been dragging its feet, according to the very judge, about complying, responding to this Freedom of Information Act request. A victory, but where does it take us?
Well, the thing it's going to take us is more transparency and an ability for the Judiciary Committee to continue their investigations of some of the agencies in the federal government that, frankly, have been turned against the American people. The second thing I'll say about this, especially with the Department of Justice using FBI to go after parents, this was an inside job, like you just said, between the NEA, the AFT, and the White House. They wanted to tamp down all the talk from parents being concerned about what was happening, not just in the classroom, but also some of the culture in our schools that was promoting gender transitions and the like. And parents were very concerned, and they wanted more information. So you have some of the highest offices in our country were turned against these parents who have a primary job of caring and looking after and raising their kids. Like, look, we just talked about it in the last topic, talking about crime. But if you have a federal government that's targeting parents and trying to stop them from raising their kids, you're only going to get more of the chaos we talked about before. So we're going to do our job on Capitol Hill through the Judiciary Committee and hold these agencies accountable. This is the first step of getting that information.
You know, you're talking about an administration that's targeting parents, but you're on Financial Services, the greatest committee in the Congress, where I once served too, Congressman. It's the most powerful and the best. But you had Gary Gensler, the chair of the SEC, in your committee today, and you were asking questions. And by the way, when you talk about radical and targeting, he's targeting retail investors, those of us who have access to the markets at very low dollar amounts or for free. And he's trying to create rules to take that away. But you were asking him about the Steele dossier and him approving the Steele dossier when he worked for Hillary Clinton. What was he saying to you? How did he try to get around that?
Well, first of all, he was stunned. I don't think he expected me to go into that line of questioning, because we were actually talking about overreach at the SEC, him deciding to write a bunch of climate rules that Congress never gave the SEC any authority to do. But he just thinks that because there's a 1933 or 34 Securities Act, he could basically do what he wants. So we were really talking about that. And then, toward the ends of questioning, I just remembered, off the top of my head, I said, hey, weren't you the CFO for the Hillary Clinton campaign? And he was stunned. He didn't know how to answer. I think there's a meme on that right now floating around Twitter. And then the second piece was, well, then if you were the CFO, did you authorize the purchase of the Steele dossier? Which, by the way, if we're going to be talking about what's going on in Manhattan with Alvin Bragg, the Steele dossier was actually interfering with a presidential election back in 2016.
I can attest to that. Sean was walking around with his phone, watching that hearing. We were afraid he was going to hurt himself, like fall over something, because he was like mobile watching it, Congressman. We were talking about education. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona was questioning the use of federal funds in schools. Listen to this.
I don't believe federal dollars should be used for voucher programs. What I'm concerned with, sir, is at the expense of a quality local public education school, what we're seeing is those same dollars being considered to go somewhere else. I'm in favor of families having options. I chose a technical high school, so I had choice, but I don't believe that it should be done at the expense of the local public education school.
He's in favor of options, but he's going to decide what those options are, in essence.
Well, look, first of all, I totally disagree with him. We're at a point in our country where we have children in many of our cities who are severely below grade level in reading and in mathematics. How are they supposed to excel and take the reins of our country and our economy in the future if they're not even on grade level? Listen, public education, we all understand, has been a staple of our country for a very long time. But we are in the information age. Like we have people talking about quantum computing and AI. And while we're having those conversations, you mean to tell me that the only way to educate America's children is through the public education system? That's not true. empower parents, give them purchasing power so they can make a decision for their child. They can be at the front of the table, not at the back of the table the way Joe Biden and elements of the DOJ and the FBI want them. Put them at the head of the table, let them make decisions for their children. That way they're leading their children at home. Their children are finding the best education possible, and America succeeds as a result.
Cardona's talking about how he cares about the school system, the public school system, which really means he cares about the teachers union. And I thought he's supposed to care about the kids and the education that the kids get. And if you can't get an education at the public school system, give them the damn money and let them go to a school that's going to actually educate their kid and give that child a shot at the American dream. 30 seconds, Congressman.
Hey, listen, 100%. Let me add this one last piece to that. If the private schools and the charter schools were unionized, he would not have a problem. He would be like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Send them anywherever you want. But it's because those other outfits, those other institutions are not unionized. Miguel Cardona and people on the left have a major problem. America, it is time to empower parents. It's time to have an actual economy of education so our children are getting the best bang for the buck that we are all spending on their behalf.
Well said, Congressman. Thank you for joining us and good work today on the committee.
All right. Thank you.